in the late model sportsman division, he had a great run just 1 week ago. He drives the Blue Away number 48 LMS automobile. Glenn Wright, welcome to the show, Glenn.
Hi, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's talk about last week first, because I was in a situation where you've run up front a lot this year. Sometimes you get a little wide, or you get one of those situations and pass the car, something happens, but you were really hooked up to the inside groove, and that's all you needed last week.
Yeah, it was a 40-lap race, which is a little bit longer than we normally run, and I think everybody was taking a little bit easier. The track was real slippery on the outside, and I think that caused a lot of people to stay down low. My car really hooked up down low, and we took off. The only one we couldn't beat was the 46, and he really had the field covered, but it was a good run, and we've had some tough luck here with wrecks, and it was good to finish a race for once.
That's your second year in the late model division, so you got the feel of the track last year well enough that now you're getting to a point where you say, okay, this is what the car is doing. We know, we've experienced this before, we know what we're going to do to it. And it's really starting to show now, because you can make the changes a lot quicker and less feeling out period.
Yeah, I'm real fortunate. This year I have a new race car. This car was built by Robbie Crouch, who he and I raced together for years, as you know. And so this one has got the Robbie Crouch technology in it, and it's a very easy car to adjust. It's very it reacts very quickly to any kind of change. So this racetrack here, with the weather being fairly constant for the last couple of months, we've been able to just have to tweak it a little bit, and the car has really gone well. Really gone well.
Now, he mentioned Robbie Crouch. We may as well get out of the way now. In case you're wondering what he meant by that, remember all those wins Robbie had in the ACT divisions? He has more than anyone else. This guy who owned the car was Glenn Wright, so let's keep that in mind. And that really has to help you, because you know that as you travel to a lot of different tracks with the Tour, you learned how, okay, different tracks, this works. And you would think that maybe with a regional series that would help Glenn out, but surprisingly, you don't really run the regional series. You're really devoting your whole year to Airborne. Yeah,
I started here last year, and I really felt that I needed another year here before I started doing anything else, and I think that was a wise move. A lot of the guys racing regional have been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years, and I don't need to be in their way, and I needed another good year here, and I'm glad I've done it, and next year maybe we'll go regional racing.
Did it feel strange going from a car owner to a car driver? That's not the normal procession of things. Most people might do it in the opposite order, but you got used to all these guys as a car owner. You didn't compete against them, but you certainly saw them all the time, and now you got to run against them.
Well, you know, as a car owner, when I got together with Robbie 11 years ago, Robbie was a young talent, came up from Florida. He had a lot of raw talent, didn't have very good equipment. So I brought the equipment to the dance, and I really didn't know a whole lot about stock car racing. And 11 years traveling with him and watching him, I obviously learned a lot. And Robbie really encouraged me when we finally had accomplished everything we wanted to do with ACT. He really encouraged me to get into a race car and try it. I did. I got hooked, and we're here.
All that travel with the Tour put on a lot of miles. If you should decide to go regional racing, the traveling is certainly not going to bother you, but the expense factor comes in again. It's not a cheap ordeal to run these cars out there.
No, it's not. Although, you know, ACT's done a good job with this division as far as trying to keep the costs down, and it really isn't that bad. If you can, if you don't have any engine problems, it's not bad. Regional racing, yeah, you got a little bit more. You got a lot of travel involved, and you probably got a little more tire expense. And you're also going to spend, those are longer races, so you're going to have more costs there.
Well, let's talk about tonight. For the first time in about 3 or 4 weeks, Mother Nature doesn't even look like she's even going to threaten the parade, but it is supposed to get cold later, and some of the drivers are saying when that sun goes down, the track will change on us. Well, you've been around racing a while, mostly as a car owner. You know it's going to change. You expecting that?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we went out there this first practice, and we found out where the car needs to be. This practice now, we will start to adjust it away a little bit, and hopefully work it into its setup so that it'll be right when we race like 8:30, 9 o'clock. It is going to cool off here. The track will change significantly, and we want to get set up so we can run the outside.
Now, when you set the car up, maybe we could explain a little more. You're really not going to have the same car when you go out for your features you will for the qualifier, because, like you say, it's going to be daylight. If the car isn't, say, 100%, how much can you do as a driver inside that car to maybe correct the problem? Can you maybe brake a little sooner, not brake quite as deep? How much can you do as a driver knowing what the problem is?
Well, you can do quite a bit in order to be able to race the car. The car is not going to be fast, though. Okay, if the car is pushing, meaning when you go into the corner and it doesn't want to turn, obviously you got to slow down going into the corner. If the car is loose coming off the corner, which means the rear end of the car wants to run away with you, obviously you can't get on the gas as fast, and as a result you're not as competitive. However, it's important because the way we set our car up is we set it up not to run very fast at the beginning, and as we get a little tire wear, we try to work it into its setup. So you have to be patient, and you sort of have to let the race come to you. But there are things you can do to correct it, and hopefully you guess right on the setup. That's the guess.
Well, let's talk about the inside groove of this place, because all year long we've seen cars running very strong. They make that little slip or even try to pass someone, get to that second groove, and then the whole train goes under them. There's not much you can do at that point, but in the setting up of the car, you can anticipate if we get this car to stick on the bottom like it did last week for you, we're going to probably get a good finish tonight.
Yeah, I think so. But as Doug Hoare proved last week, in order to win here, you got to be able to work on the outside, and that's the key. And if I'm going to win a race here, I got to make that bugger work on the outside, and that's what we're going to try to do tonight.
But I'd say that probably be your first priority, or now your goal would probably be to pick up the checker flag.
Oh yeah, I got two goals this year. One is to win a race, and the other is to finish in the top 10 in points. So right now I'm 11th in points, and we haven't carried the checkered flag yet, but there's still a few races to go.
Yeah, I was going to say Glenn is 11th in points after last week's double points race, and he's just a few points out of 10, so you're right there. Again, I mean, you can't go into a race and say, well, you know, this guy's ahead of me in points, I've got to get ahead of him. You just let the race pretty much run its own course.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you have to run your own race. You can't run anybody else's race. And for me, I'm so busy trying to get around this rascal track, I can't think of anybody else anyway. In fact, I don't really pay attention to really who I'm racing with. I don't really pay much attention until maybe we have a yellow flag, then I take note of who's there. But other than that, it's you know, anybody that's good at race car driving is got to be good at concentrating, and you got to concentrate 100% is what you're doing, and I really don't pay attention to what's going on around me.
You know, a lot of car owners at one point would say, you know, if I could only get behind the wheel of that race car or a race car, I'd do this or I'd do that. Well, you're behind the wheel now. When you were a car owner, I'm sure you had those feelings saying, boy, I wish I could see what this feels like. Well, now you know what it feels like. Tougher being an owner or tougher being a driver?
Oh, I think it's much tougher being a driver. It's quite a bit easier to be an owner and be a quarterback in the pits. However, I guess the hardest thing is that I never realized about racing is that there's so much that goes on around you that as a fan, you see, okay, when you're focusing on one car. When you're driving that car and then you see a video of it, I mean, you don't see any of that going on, and it's really interesting. And the close calls that go on that you aren't even aware of, that you're right there, is quite interesting. So I particularly don't like to watch videos. I know a lot of guys here video the races and watch them, and I don't. I'd rather not do that.
So when you were a car owner and Robbie was out there, you probably had a lot of instances where you came in and you said, we've got to change this on the car. Any situation where you say, boy, I really wish you didn't do that, and it probably worked out for the best, of course, but any second guessing when you're a car owner at all with the American Canadian Tour?
No, actually, you know, my role as a car owner with Robbie, we made it very clear at the outset. I didn't know a whole lot about setting up a chassis, and I couldn't add a whole lot to it. And he and I had an agreement right up front, which was he was going to run the race operation, and you know, I was going to take care of what went on behind the scenes, as far as putting the team together and the financing and so forth. And I never had any input into what he was doing or not doing on race day. At times, at some races, I used to wear a radio and spot for him, but that was only to let him know, you know, if there was a wreck or yellow was coming out or something like that. But no, I never was involved in that, and I think that's why we were successful. Robbie's very capable of doing that, and we didn't need two chiefs, and I think that's why we were successful.
I want to thank my guest for joining me. He has a whole bunch of wins as a car owner, looking for that elusive first victory as a driver. And the way he ran last week, it probably isn't all that far away. Driving the right, white and blue, number 48, Late Model Sportsman, here each and every Saturday at Airborne, Glenn Wright. Thanks for joining me, Glenn.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
Good afternoon, race fans. Welcome to another exciting edition of Motorsports Magazine. A regular show on tap tonight. Highlights including the Street Stocks, Flying Tigers, and Late Model Sportsman.
Good evening.